Have you ever felt like the government is just this huge, complicated machine that you have absolutely no control over? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see how one person with a powerful voice and a clear goal can actually move that machine. And it all starts with a single, powerful conviction.
This was the conviction of Shannon Kustichin, a 13-year-old girl from the Attawapiskat First Nation. It's such a simple, powerful statement, right? And it ended up sparking a national movement. This is where our story really begins.
Now, Shannon wasn't fighting for some abstract political idea. No, she was fighting for something every kid deserves, a safe place to learn. Her story takes this huge topic of government and grounds it in a deeply human struggle that I think we can all understand.
I mean, just look at this. This was her reality. Shannon and her classmates were going to school in these drafty, mold-infested portables. And why? Because their actual school had been sitting on top of a massive diesel spill for decades. And in 2007, the government's official response was basically, sorry, there's no money for a new one.
So, what does she do? She absolutely refused to take no for an answer. This 13-year-old girl traveled all the way to Ottawa to meet with government ministers face-to-face. She spoke at rallies, she talked to human rights activists. She even took the issue to a United Nations convention. She was determined to make her voice, and the voices of her classmates, completely impossible to ignore.
To make that kind of incredible change, Shannon had to figure out how to navigate the system. And for us to understand that system, we have to start at the very foundation, the official rulebook for how Canada runs, the Constitution.
The easiest way to think about it is like this. If Canada were a big, complicated board game, the Constitution would be the instruction manual. It lays out all the rules, tells you who has what powers, and explains how all the different pieces are supposed to work together.
And this rulebook has three really crucial jobs. First, it spells out how the government is structured and how it works. Second, it's the supreme law of the land. That means no other law can break its rules. And third, it explains your rights as a citizen, which you'll find in things like the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
But here's the thing. This rulebook isn't some dusty old document that's set in stone. It's what's known as a living document. It has grown and changed through these huge moments in our history, from the BNA Act that literally created Canada in 1867, all the way to the Constitution Act of 1982, which finally brought it home fully under Canadian control.
So how does the Constitution organize all this power? Well, it sets up a government that's divided into three separate parts, or branches. And this whole setup is designed to create a balance, so that no single group ever gets way too much control.
First, that power is split between the federal government, which handles big-picture stuff for the whole country, like national defense and trade, and the provincial governments, which manage more local things like healthcare and, super important for Shannon's story, education.
Okay, so the first branch is the legislative branch. You probably know it better as Parliament. That's the House of Commons and the Senate. Think of it as the country's debate chamber. It's the place where ideas get tossed around, bills are proposed, and laws are actually made. Next up, you've got the executive branch. This is the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Their job is to take all those laws that the legislature passed and actually put them into action. They're the ones operating the government day to day.
And finally, there's the judicial branch. These are all the courts and the judges. They're basically the referees. They interpret what the laws mean and make sure they're being applied fairly, ensuring everyone is playing by that constitutional rulebook.
So, knowing these rules is absolutely crucial. And that brings us to another incredible story that shows how a deep understanding of the system, down to a single word, can change the entire course of a country's history.
All right, picture this. The year is 1990. The government is trying to pass something called the Meech Lake Accord. It was this massive package of changes to the Constitution. The stakes were incredibly high, and the rule was crystal clear. To pass, it needed a yes from the federal government and all 10 provinces. Unanimous consent. This is where Elijah Harper comes in. He was a First Nations member of the Manitoba legislature. He and many other Aboriginal leaders saw the Accord as a huge step backward because it completely failed to recognize or guarantee the rights of Aboriginal peoples. They were literally being left out of a conversation about the future of their own country.
So when the time came for the Manitoba legislature to vote on the Accord, Elijah Harper stood up, holding an eagle feather, and used his power as a legislator to block it with a simple no. He stopped the entire process cold. And because Manitoba couldn't give its required consent, the whole national accord failed. One person with one word changed everything.
The stories of Shannon Kustachin and Elijah Harper are just brilliant illustrations that one voice really can make a difference. So, the big question is, how can your voice translate into real, tangible change, like a new school or a new law?
Let's circle back to Shannon. Tragically, she passed away at 14, but her fight didn't end there. The Shannon's Dream campaign was launched in her honor. A motion was introduced in Parliament to finally end the underfunding of First Nations education. And in 2012, a brand new elementary school opened its doors in Ottawa-Pistat. Her voice created a legacy of real, concrete change.
And this is the official path an idea takes to become law. It starts as something called a bill, gets introduced, then it's debated, studied closely by a committee, voted on, and finally, it receives what's called royal assent to officially become law. It's a long road for sure, but it's designed to be really thorough.
But here's the key part. Who can get this whole process started? It's not just the government. Interest groups like Mothers Against Drunk Driving can push hard for change. Individual members of Parliament can introduce their own bills. And ordinary people, citizens, you, can organize, raise awareness, and pressure politicians to take up your cause.
And that brings us right back to where we started. From a new school in a remote community to a massive shift in constitutional politics, we've seen how understanding the system gives people the power to make a real difference. The system isn't just for politicians, it's for everyone. So I guess the only question left is, what issue would you speak up for?